and foremost, I would like to thank you both for joining Toxin Magazine. And just for some of the people who may not know who you are, could each of you identify who you are and the organization you represent?
Yes, thank you for having us. I'm Howard Eagle, a member of the Take It Down Planning Committee Faith Community Alliance Coalition.
Minister Clifford Florence, Associate Minister of the Central Church of Christ, President of the Faith Community Alliance, member of the Take It Down Coalition, and honored to be with you today.
Today, you held a press conference regarding the 9-year-old girl that was pepper sprayed by Rochester Police Department. Now, could you tell us a little about what happened and why you felt the need to hold a press conference regarding this incident?
Well, it's interesting that the incident has gone national and perhaps international. I think I saw an AP report or something like that. It's one of the most disgusting situations we've seen on the part of the Rochester Police Department in recent times. It's not the first time. We know that not long ago our community was dealing with the trauma caused by the murder of Mr. Daniel Prude. So this is just a couple months later, and here's another horrendous uh, incident. The Rochester Police Department has a long history of these kinds of things, and so we thought it was important to make a statement on behalf of our coalition in support of the family of the young girl and the family, and to kind of just let it be known that if there's anything we can do in terms of support for the family, we're willing to do that. But beyond that, we also are issuing a call, if you will, to our community to finally organize ourselves and put a stop to this kind of thing once and for all. We don't believe that we'll be able to do that effectively unless we are organized. And so we're calling for, which we have been doing for months, if not years, calling for one table for everybody to really get serious about unity and for us to come together and begin to develop some solutions around not only this particular issue, but many issues that are plaguing the black community and have been for decades. And so, in terms of a step, we're calling for anti-racist education to begin in the Rochester Police Department within weeks. For a process to begin, we are taking the position that our coalition must be a part of that process because we bring expertise in terms of understanding how to do anti-racist education in authentic and serious ways. And so we're not sure that that's going to happen, but that points out one of the reasons why we must be organized, because if we have to force, if you will, force people to do it, then we will. We'll do whatever it takes. And so we'll be holding a community meeting on the 11th of February. That will be a week from tomorrow. Today is the 3rd, right? Tomorrow's the 4th. So Thursday the 11th at 6 o'clock p.m. at Central Church of Christ, 101 South Plymouth Avenue, across the street from the so-called Public Safety Building. We will be holding a community meeting, and we've invited in two of the heavies, if you will, in terms of healthcare, mental health in particular, in the Rochester area. That's Dr. Deborah Stamps and Reverend Wade Norwood. And Minister Florence can say more about them because he has a relationship with them through Central Church of Christ. But we've invited them or their representatives to join us at the church on the 11th at 6 o'clock to help inform our people about services that are available to them and what we need to do in terms of accessing those services.
Minister, would you like to add anything?
Sure, we also thought the um, press conference was necessary because our focus has been on institutional, structural, and individual racism. And of course, we all realize that if this was a white 9-year-old, we wouldn't have this interview. We wouldn't have had to have a press conference today. Uh, we would have seen decisive action on behalf of the politician and the decision makers in terms of what is the right action to take to correct the misstep of the brutality that the police continues to illustrate against Black children. One of the requests that we continue to make is that even if we could get the treatment that whites receive from law enforcement when there is a perceived problem, until we get to that standard of policing, then I presume that we will still face some of the victimization that our families and our children are enduring. And so we're very concerned that, and I wanted to say while Howard was talking, that I believe when the last incident of the handcuffing of a Black child in our community, that everybody came out and promised that this would not reoccur and this would not die. But it seems after a week or two, after we protest and cry a little and complain, things go back to be the same. And we're attempting, with God's help and with the support of concerned people of Monroe County and the city of Rochester, that we can turn the tide on that.
Now, today you requested that they work with your organization, the RPD or the police chief. Did you provide a deadline for when they should contact you or when you want this to happen? You're on mute.
I apologize. No, we didn't provide a deadline, but we're looking for it to happen immediately. If we're going to begin a process to educate people around racism, then we have to plan that. So the planning needs to take place immediately because what we're talking about is it should be up and running within a couple of weeks. And so they know how to contact us. They can anytime they want to. I have to be honest and say that we really don't expect them to, because this is part of what's wrong is that we've seen this kind of arrogance where they pick and choose the city officials, from the city hall to the chief's office to all of the local officials, the county executive, so-called Black legislators. Uh, they all pick and choose who they will work with, who they want. Meanwhile, they spew rhetoric about we all need to work together. So they know that we're active, they know we're willing, they know we bring expertise, but they haven't contacted us. And so if they do, we will be pleasantly surprised. If they don't, we will organize. And if, again, if we have to force them to do it, then we will. And that's a shame. It's a real shame. That thought is a shame that we would have to force people what they should be doing anyways in terms of accountability, in terms of their duties, the duties that they're sworn to carry out. I mean, you can't continue to allow police brutality, and that's what it is in the raw, to run rampant across the community. It's always, every incident that happens, we hear the same thing. This time is different. We're going to put an end to it. We're going to develop new policy. No new policy has happened since Daniel Prue's death. No new policy has happened since the 10-year-old was handcuffed this past summer. No policy change. So it's all rhetoric. And we said that in the press conferences that we're tired of the rhetoric. We're sick and tired, to quote the late Mother Fannie Lou Hamer, we're sick and tired of being sick and tired of the lies. You know, and it's time now to produce. Minister says often good intentions are not good enough. That's not good enough anymore. We need results. We gotta produce results, concrete, measurable, significant, permanent results. Police brutality has to stop. It has to come to a halt. It is important for all um, personnel in the police department, not only in the police department, but in all major institutions that deal with large numbers of people, that deal with the public, to understand racism, to understand how it functions, not only in their own minds and their own attitudes and their own belief systems and their own behaviors, but how it functions in an institutional sense through the rules, the regulations, the policies, the practices, the procedures that maintains and perpetuates racism. That's how it's propped up and maintained. But people don't know that, so they think that we're just, you know, race baiters is the rhetoric that they use. I see that all over Facebook now. Oh, people are race baiting. No, this is not about race baiting. What happened to that young girl was not about race baiting. What happened to another young girl, black girl, this past summer was not race baiting. What happened to Mr. Prude was not race baiting. What happened to the long list of people that we can name who've been killed and assaulted by the police in this community and communities across this nation? Because Rochester is not really unique. That's one of the most troubling things about this. This is happening all across the nation. Maybe more frequently in a city of this size than many other cities that are comparable in terms of size. But it's happening all over the nation. That's why we know it's not one big coincidence, but instead it is absolutely the result of past and ongoing policies, practices, procedures, rules, regulations, laws. That's what needs to be changed. And people will take this position. You can't legislate race, anti-racism, and so forth. No, you can't legislate it. We understand that, but you can change laws that help to prop it up, and you can absolutely teach people if people are racist, and they are, and we need to cut that clear because of their socialization, because of their limited experience with people of color and so forth. In many cases, no experience until they got their jobs as police or teachers or firemen or women, firemen and women, and so forth, civil servants. But not only civil servants, it's true for the private sector as well, probably worse in the private sector. Um, but if people are racist, and they are, they learn to be racist. They were taught to be racist. You're not born racist. You're taught that through your socialization process, and it's reinforced by your environment daily, every minute, every second. So if you can learn it, you can unlearn it. But people in this town don't want to don't want to teach because they know there's going to be resistance, especially from unions. The police union, the teachers union, they all resist it. You know, they take this position that that's not really what the critical issue, but it is. It's one of the most critical issues, and we must do it.
So, what do you say to people who are asking the question of what should those cops have done? They
Oh,
aren't trained mental health professionals. They are not trained with children. What would you have liked to see those officers do in that
oh,
situation?
oh, we have an answer for that. We have an answer for that, and this is not rhetoric. What they could have done is treated her like she was white. That's what they could have done. Those racist police officers would have died before they sprayed a white child in her eyeballs the way the woman who was on the scene, the woman officer put it, you're going to get this pepper spray in your eyeballs. They wouldn't say that to a white child, and they wouldn't spray a white child. There's no record of them having done that kind of thing to white children in this community ever. But when they see black people, when they see other people of color, this is part of what we're talking about. The deep seated superiority complex kicks in. They see someone who's less than, not their equals, somebody who's inferior to them and can therefore be treated that way. And this is not, we're not talking about something anecdotal. These are long standing historical patterns that play out time and time and time again for decades, if not centuries. And so they could have, this is a real answer. They could have treated her like she was a white child. That's
So,
what they could have done. Yet we do know about the so-called PIC team. The city's supposed to have this mental health team that is dispatched to these kinds of calls, but there's all of this confusion around whether or not this was the kind of call that they should go to. We've heard the mayor and others say the woman who's Torres, I think her name is, who's over at this new pilot, is what they're calling it, that they haven't developed the aspect of the pilot where the team and the police go in the community together. That it's either or. This is what they're saying. But this is the kind of chaos, right? Look, Daniel Prude happened almost a year ago, March 2020. It's been almost a year. The young girl who was pepper sprayed this summer, that's been what, 6 months ago. And nothing's changed. They're still talking about a pilot. A year later, a pilot. This is what we mean. This is unacceptable. It's time to
So,
move beyond that.
so, Minister, what would you say to people that would say race had nothing to do with the incident that happened on January 29th?
That would be impossible to take that position for the simple reason that if we would bring the counter presentation, I would assume that white people are apprehended around this city for one thing or another every day. And they don't make the news for mistreatment. I have one example, and I want to come back to what happened on the 29th. I happened to be at Wegmans in one evening, and there were four uh, uh, Caucasian women that had items in their clothes and in bags that they had stolen from the store. There happened to be a sheriff in the store, and the manager ran out and told the children to stop and listen to the police. They froze right in their steps. They went and sat on the curb. The officers talked to them like they were in school. They brought other officers in. It seemed like they were on the phone calling their parents to try to get them assistance. Um, this didn't make the news. Uh, they seemed to have been treated as if they had done something honorable when they were guilty of a serious offense. But I wondered in my mind as I watched that whole episode if four black girls did the same thing, what kind of treatment would they have received from the sheriff department? And the fact that it was all white officers, no Latino officers, no black officers were on that call, and those four uh, uh, young adults, women, were treated with respect. So you fast forward to your question and ask, what would we say? I would say exactly what we said in our press conference today, that race, institutional, individual, and structural was at its highest peak when they decided to go and deal with that young girl, and the fact that it has been shared that they have been to that home before. So some of the reported information that came from the mayor and her office and subsequently other people, that they weren't clear on what type of call it was or that it was for some type of robbery, may have been an amiss statement to make. So they had some encounters with that family and knew to some level what to expect. So that's where we feel the racism is really at the core of how Black people are seen, how Black children are seen as less than human. And that's a part of the education that our white counterparts have. And it is the white pathology that has to be cured because it is a serious disease that white people have.
So, what do you say to? I know in the past, the previous chiefs, previous mayors, people have tried to implement more Black police officers, recruiting more Black police officers to the Rochester Police Department. Those efforts have not been successful. So, what advice would you give to young Black men and women to kind of be a part of maybe the Rochester Police Department, or make it more enticing for Black people to be a part of the Rochester Police Department? Howard, you can answer that if you want.
Yeah, but and the minister can also comment if he'd like, but that's not the job of the community. It's not the job of the community to figure that out. However, we believe it's a misnomer. This idea that because you get more people of color, automatically things change. No, there's a culture. If you listen to the mayor, if you listen to the police chief, if you listen to the special deputy chief that they brought in from wherever he came from, they all say that. They all say what we're trying to change is the culture. And that's not just about skin color. That's about a belief system. That's about the, what do they call it, the fine blue line or the invisible blue line or whatever it is. It's a pact that police officers have, not to tell on each other, to back each other up, right or wrong. That's part of why we call him for Mazzio's termination as well. Never has Mazzio said in all the years that he's been chief of the police union that a police officer was wrong. No matter what they do, they're always right. And in this situation, he's saying they're right because they acted within policy. And technically he might be right, but as human beings, as it relates to morality and ethics and compassion and all of those good things that we're supposed to have as human beings, you did not see that playing out in the street. And again, if this was some weird anecdotal thing that never happened before or happened one or two times, maybe we could entertain those silly arguments about racism doesn't have anything to do with this. But we're talking about patterns that have existed literally for centuries. And it's not hard to understand. You got something like 90%, it might be higher, of the police department are people who do not live in the communities that they police. Many of them are from rural communities in which they had no contact with black people, no contact with Hispanic people, no contact with Asian people, and certainly not contact with poor black people and poor Hispanic people. They're from white, middle class, lily white communities, and they know nothing about the culture, the history of the people they're policing, and they believe that doesn't matter. You see, that's how institutional racism works. We're not talking about some simplistic thing like somebody being consciously uh, racist and out to harm black people. We're talking about people who have issues, deep seated issues that they don't even understand. They don't even know they have. I don't like the language about implicit bias, but that's what people refer to it as. Just like racism that has been conditioned in you from the crib up and you don't even know it because you've been taught that you're not, that you're a so-called good person. And if you're a good person, you can't be racist. But that's all wrong. And so when we would say to people who say race has nothing to do with this, we say you don't understand racism. Let us teach you. And we would say listen to your own scholars. Listen to Robin DiAngelo, one of the foremost scholars in the nation, a white woman, Dr. Robin DiAngelo, who takes the position that all white people are necessarily racist because of their socialization processes. So people don't know what the heck they're talking about. They because they have this, in many cases, white people in particular have deep-seated race-based cognitive dissonance. They can't deal with the idea that they themselves are racist, that they've been raised to be that way. And so they think because I have never burned a cross on anybody's lawn, or I have never voted for Trump, or I have never called anybody the N-word, I can't possibly be racist. Well, that's not what racism is all about. Those are just the most egregious examples of how racism manifests. But it's more dangerous in its institutional form, in the laws, the rules, the policies that allows you to spray a young black girl with mace and to handcuff her and rough her up and keep your job because there's a law that says you have a right to due process. You can't be fired. Some of those, that's what we mean. That's what we're talking about. Some of those laws are problematic and need to be changed and can be
So,
changed.
so what do you say to people who say that you all believe you are the only people in this community that could change the direction of racism or the only experts in this field in Rochester?
We say plain and simple, and I hate to be so raw, if you will, so non-diplomatic. We say you're full of crap. And many of you have had opportunities to show what you know, to show what you can do, and you haven't done much. But some of us who do have expertise have never had an opportunity to show what we can do, to show the kind of results that we can help to produce. because none of us can do this alone. Alone, we got to work together for real. But unity can't be lip service. It has to be real working together on an ongoing basis and so forth. So whoever is saying that is full of crap. We do not take the position that we are the only ones who understand racism, but we do take the position that of those in Monroe County who understand racism, we are at the top of the list. We have real, authentic, deep seated knowledge and expertise and experience. It's not just about book knowledge. We've been fighting racism in the streets where it rears its head for 30 years, for 40 years. And so this is not just intellectual. And so again, we say, I want to repeat it again. We say to all of those who are saying that, you're full of crap, come forward, say it publicly. Let's talk about what really needs to be done if we're going to seriously address racism in this community. Let's talk about your raise commission. Let's talk about the fact that you put racists on your commission that's supposed to be identifying racism. Let's talk about you operating in secrecy with our public money. Let's talk about that.
Minister, would you like to add anything?
Sure, we recognize that those who call themselves the gurus of dealing with racism have not produced anything. What we have produced is poverty, prostitutes, and pimps that continue to get monies and live well, some in the city, but most in the suburbs and the rural areas. But yet the people who were targeted for the results, you look at our mapping, uh, we were supposed to be dealing with the same kind of issues. And we were told that in 15 years, we would begin to see some fruit. We have exceeded that and or coming up close to it, and no results. Former Mayor Johnson rolled out a similar program some 20 plus years ago, and he has stated himself that he led the fight against racism, but it produced no results after close to $1 million was spent. And then there are other allies who are going out trying to teach each other about racism. And they've met in the four corners of this community, but it has not produced anything. And especially when white people attempt to teach white people about racism, and then they perfect the wrong results of what they've taught one another because they become more vicious. As a result, we see it in education, we see it in our police department. We see it in still redlining. It's not called that now, but families are still that are black are having problems getting mortgages, getting apartments, and then we have a racist government that allows slum white landlords to abuse black families in our community, not paying their taxes, not paying fees, not paying violations. But in the white community where their properties are, they're kept up to the best and pristine abilities that they can. But where black people live, they're rat infested, they're lead infested, and the rent is exuberant. But again, that's not racism. That's the way we do business here in Rochester, Monroe County. So we believe we have the expertise to point out some things, and also the courts. We have people that we've elected to be fair to all people, and we have judges that support the racism of protecting slumlords, and we have city officials, county officials, some state officials. So we believe we have within our wheelhouse, if you will, some expertise and knowledge that can shine some direct light on these travesties.
So, in the past, I have spoken to former Mayor Bill Johnson, and he stated that he believes that he had some measure of success. So, how do you determine if there is a measure of success or there hasn't been,
Well,
in your opinion?
that's really interesting. So I don't know if you asked him, how does he? You're asking the right question now, but it should have been a question that you put to him. How
Well,
does
the question would be to you because
no, how
the
does he
minister.
measure? We can't speak intelligently to what he said unless we know how he measures success.
Well, the reason why I believe because the minister said that there wasn't any success. So how
There
can you say
wasn't any. The
right? But how
most
can you say he had? And that's the point. How can you say that he didn't have success if he believes he did? What
because I
part
know.
of it? How are you measuring it?
Okay, here's how I'm measuring it, and here's how you can measure it. Go back and find it. It's called the Mosaic Partnership, 20 years ago, and read what the goals are, and tell me if they have been achieved. That's how I measure success. Not one of those goals have been achieved. Now, Bill will give you some flowery stuff about we develop some relationships that are ongoing and long lasting, and so no, no, no. You had goals. And if you're serious about impacting racism, especially in its most devastating forms, institutionally and structurally, you must have goals. And they must be measurable, they must be concrete, they can't
But
be abstract.
but how do you determine success? Success is
Even
debatable, right?
okay, no, no, success is not debatable if
Okay.
your model is sound. If your model of change is sound, success is not debatable because goals are concrete, they are clear, and they are either achieved or they're not. So
I,
here's
I
an example. We work on the real team of the Rochester City School District, the racial equity uh, uh, um, advocacy leadership team. Now, for almost 3 years, it's been in existence. It has some concrete goals. For example, one of the goals is all Rochester City School District employees will have anti-racist education. If you talk to city officials and so forth, I'm not city school district officials, they will tell you that's happening. And the next question is where? Can I go observe it? Can I see it? What did it produce? And so forth. So I mean, you can pretend and even take steps toward goals, but either you achieve it or you don't.
So Howard, your belief is it's all or nothing. So if say
No,
if
no,
they
no, no. You're
okay,
putting words in my mouth. I don't know what that means, all or nothing. Either this is my position. This is our position. This is not my position. This is our position. A goal is either achieved or it's not.
but say if you have 5 goals and you achieve 2.
Well, then that's progress.
Right. So that's what I'm asking. Could that be a measure of success?
Yeah, but we're
but,
talking hypothetical.
Right.
but I
We're talking hypothetical, and that's part of what's wrong. That's what people do in this community. They talk hypothetical all the time. No,
but
we
I
got to
can
talk realistically.
and
Minister.
What are
I
the
can
goals? That's the critical question. What are the goals? That's what we need to be clear about first, or else you can't tell if they've been achieved.
well I can add this perspective, and I think it would support how we measure it along with the issue of racism. I could see some goals achieved by Mayor Johnson and others who were involved in that, because out of that effort, it created a political machine that went against the Black community. Many of the uh, white people in this community that were powerful became politicians and ran against the very person that brought them in to build relationships. And the plight of Black people in this community has gone nowhere. And then there were some Black politicians who wanted to be like white politicians and continue the goal of suppressing the success of Black people in this community. That goal has been achieved because this is one of the worst cities that Black people can live in America. So, yes, I can turn it around and say they've met every goal when it comes to how they have oppressed and continue to oppress the Black community politically, economically, socially, educationally. We have the poorest educational system in the state and at the bottom nationwide. So when you look at the plight, the 10th richest city in the United States, where 100% of our families and children live in concentrated poverty. First to Detroit, Dayton, Ohio, Cleveland, Ohio, Hartford, Connecticut, Chicago, Illinois. Welcome to the Frederick Douglass City. And here we are. The plight of Black people has been worse. Now, let's measure where we are presently. You put your question in the hands of those who are in leadership now and tell me where they have deviated from the plight of Black people getting better. And if they're not following the same rubric of success to keep us down, then maybe I'm in the wrong county and in the wrong city. And when you look at the political players that some Black politicians have given away their authority to, what is their assignment? To oppress the progress of Black people. We have one congressman here who presides over one of the poorest sections in the community of Rochester. And what has he done since he's been elected to his position specifically for Black people in the Black community? Very little or no result. So yes, I would say they have reached their goal in showing us how racism operates and how it precisely operates against the Black community and will continue unless we stop it or redirect it.